What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook. Born in Vegas, Will Brinson here, along with our usual cast to break down Week 18 of the NFL season. What's up, fellas? Joining me, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and RJ White to look at every game on the slate. A ton at stake in Week 18. Only 2 playoff spots remaining, but of course, a lot of seeding manipulations and machinations that can go on. 2 Saturday games as well. And of course, incentives. We will get into every angle of every game. And we start, by the way, shout out to Larry Hartstein's in-laws. If you're watching, if you figured out how to turn on the TV downstairs and you're seeing Larry's beautiful face on television, we'll start, Larry, with the Browns at the Ravens. The Ravens, this line is climbed. This is absurd. It's 20.5. The Ravens are favored by 20.5 points with an even more absurd total of 41.5. The Browns are not expected to do much at all in this game, Larry. Can you possibly lay this many points with the Ravens?
You can't lay it for the full game because of garbage time, but I think you can lay it in the first half. I got it at -9.5 early in the week. Right now, still at 12.5, under 2 touchdowns. I think you can lay it with the Ravens team. That's probably going to be up 20-3, something like that at the half. They've been dominant in the first half, and you look at Lamar Jackson, plus 220 on BetMGM right now to win MVP. This is his last chance to make an MVP statement, and it was bad news for me when they announced Bailey Zappi because DTR has been so bad, but Bailey Zappi won't be much of an improvement. You don't have Jerome Ford. You don't have David Njoku. You don't have Denzel Ward, your top corner. And you also have the Ravens wanting to avenge that shocking loss in Cleveland. I'm going to play the Ravens in the first half.
Yeah, I think the Zappi news matters because I think he is better than DTR, and it gives Cleveland a fighting chance at points early in the game. I think they are going to play both, so you don't know how long he's going to play. But Cleveland offense had scored 7 or less than 3 straight. I mean, you have to do something else there. So if I'm leaning to anything, it's going to be over 7.5 first quarter. I think the Ravens could get there on their own with 10 points, but I do think there's a good chance the Browns get down and get a field goal to make it a 7-3 game after the first quarter. So I like playing that one. I do want to point out with this massive number that the last 2 dogs of 19 plus did not cover. Before that, they were 13-2 ATS since 1985. This is typically a spot where these big dogs can cover this game, but I don't know how the Browns do it, with their offense that we've seen in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and of course the Ravens are motivated here because if they win this game, they clinch the AFC North and the number 3 seed. They would become just the second team ever to win their division by multiple games after trailing in the division lead by multiple games. The 2022 Jaguars, the other team to do that. And if the Ravens lose, the Steelers have to win to clinch the division. That would put the Ravens in as the 5 seed. So the Steelers may know, Mike, when they kick off on Saturday night at home against the Bengals as 2-point dogs with a total of 48, that their fate is sort of sealed. Because if the Ravens win, Steelers can only get as high as the 5 seed. If they lose and the Chargers lose, they would also be the 5 seed. If they win and the Ravens win, they'd be the 5 seed. And if the Steelers lose and the Chargers win, the Steelers would be the number 6 seed. Does that impact your pick here at all? Bengals at Steelers.
It does a little here for me. I like the Bengals on the money line. I will note you can definitely still play them over 12.5 team total in the first half as well, but it's really a play on this number. I think it balloons to -150 by the time the game kicks once the Ravens lock up the division and win that game. So it's really just about getting the best of the number on the money line at this point. I like Cincy. Their team has played well offensively. Joe Burrow essentially close to the MVP when you look at his numbers individually. But defensively, since week 12, this team is up to 16th in EPA per play defensively, playing a lot closer to a league average defense. In that same time, the Pittsburgh Steelers down to 24th in EPA per play. Yes, they've played a difficult schedule. We could talk about all we want. But this Bengals team is part of that difficult schedule. I think this Bengals team, if their defense does play at league average pace, is a top 6 or 7 team in the entire NFL, not just the AFC. So I like Cincinnati here on the money line.
Yeah, I love the Bengals money line as well, Mike. Part of the reason is just Joe Burrow has been freaking awesome lately. He could become, if he plays well, on Sunday, just the third quarterback in NFL history with 4,500 or more passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns, and less than 10 interceptions. The other two to do it, Tom Brady in 2007 and Aaron Rodgers in 2011, their teams combined to go 30-1 in the regular season. The Bengals here are 8-6. Of course, they play first. They have to get help from the Chiefs versus the Broncos, and then the Jets versus the Colts to get into the playoffs. But I think Cincy takes care of business. RJ, you might disagree here.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing with this number. I played +3 earlier in the week on Monday because I think the Steelers should be favored here. I think there is motivation to play even if Baltimore wins because you want to be the 5 seed. Going through Houston in the first round is a big deal. You don't want to have to play all three potentially of the Bills, Ravens, and Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. Then you look at that game they played earlier in Cincy. Pittsburgh had a season best 520 yards in the first meeting. Despite the numbers that Mike quoted, I don't think there's any proof Cincy's defense is better. They haven't really played a lot of inspiring offenses lately. There's always potential for Burrow to win a shootout, but Cincinnati is 0-7 straight up against teams that are already in the playoffs, which the Steelers obviously qualify for. They are not showing up for these big games against good teams, against playoff caliber teams. I like Pittsburgh +2.5. Still, like I said, I think they should be favored. So I'm willing to take the money line. I'm willing to take the +2.5 too.
Yeah, and RJ, one of the guys who stepped up big in that first matchup against Cincinnati was Najee Harris, rushing for over 70 yards, which he's done the last 4 times he's faced the Bengals. And, he just got through running into a brick wall of the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Eagles. And now he faces a Bengals run defense that has not been the same since they lost Logan Wilson and Sheldon Rankins. And I think when you see his prop at 45.5 yards instead of the normal 60 yards, they're telling you maybe the Steelers, after the Ravens win, are not going to be fully motivated. But like you said, the opportunity to play Houston is huge, and the opportunity to not end the season on a 4-game losing streak. I think Mike Tomlin is going all out. I love Najee Harris over rushing yards.
All right, we have a couple of big matchups in the NFC South that will determine the final playoff spot in the NFC. Baker Mayfield on fire lately. It's a banged-up Saints defense. Michael Penix looking to continue the rookie ways and get the Falcons into the playoffs. One of these teams probably in, one of these teams probably out. Definitely in, definitely out. We'll tell you who coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show for Week 18. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White. Let's head to the NFC South, fellas. The Saints at the Buccaneers. Another huge spread here with Tampa favored by 13.5 points, a total of 43.5. Worth noting here, the Bucs win. They are the NFC South champions. Tampa win plus a Rams loss. Tampa moves up to number 3. A Tampa win plus a Rams win. Tampa's the number 4, and they have to host, of course, the loser of the Minnesota-Detroit game on Sunday night. Tampa seeking to become the first team ever to start 4-6 and make the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. And they can become the only NFC team to make the playoffs in the last 5 seasons. Larry, does Tampa get it done against New Orleans at home on Sunday?
Yeah, I think they get it done easily. I mean, this is an offense that is absolutely clicking. 7 yards of play over the last 3 games. Put up 51 points in the first meeting in New Orleans when Spencer Rattler had like a momentary glimpse of success where they put up all those points in the second quarter thanks to some turnovers, and then the Bucs just blew them out anyway, 51-27. They did intercept Rattler twice in that matchup. This is a Saints team. It's put up 10 total points the past 2 weeks. Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, all not practicing still. I don't think you bring Chris Olave back, even though he is practicing. He has not played in 2 months. So I like Tampa to roll big in this one with all the incentives, Mike Evans, etc. They don't even need that. This offense is just clicking right now. They're going to put it on them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a absolute smash spot for the Bucs. I like the over 43.5. I think it's too low. I think Tampa's going to get 30-plus points easily by themselves, and the Saints will find the end zone a little bit against that pass defense. I also think Mike Evans props and Mike Evans in DFS, He's going to be chalky as hell, but I don't think it really matters because you look at this. He needs 85 yards to tie Jerry Rice for the most 1,000-yard seasons to start a career with 11. That is absurd. Maybe more importantly, if he gets 5 catches and 85 yards on Sunday against the Saints, he gets a $3 million bonus. He's going to get it. And Baker, Todd Bowles said, we're not going to game plan around it. Baker was a little more clear about it. He said, if we win, Mike will get there. And so you can expect that he will target Mike Evans down the field against a team he loves to beat up on in the Saints. No Marshawn Lattimore, of course, because he was traded. So now Mike Evans can run wild. I think he has a huge game. Love all of his props. I know the receiving yards total 94.5. That's really, really high. I don't care. I think his 100-yard game is a stone-cold lock for Evans in this spot. Elsewhere in the NFC South, the Panthers heading to Atlanta to play the Falcons, coming off that tough overtime loss against the Commanders on Sunday night. Atlanta needs to win and have Tampa Bay lose to win the NFC South. They can't be higher than the 4 seed. They're in a tough spot because they're asking a lot here, Larry, out of the New Orleans Saints to go and upset Tampa and still have to beat the Panthers at home.
Yeah, I hope they don't get caught in too much scoreboard watching because the way I'm attacking this game is Bijan Robinson over 94.5 rushing yards. Your Carolina Panthers will have managed to give up over 200 rushing yards in 3 straight games. Josie Jewell and Ashawn Robinson still not practicing as of the Thursday reports. So this run defense, almost 6 yards a carry in those 3 weeks. Bijan has put up 90 or more in 5 straights. This is the dream matchup for a running back. But again, my concern is if they look up and see Tampa's up 31-3, does Bijan get his full complement? But I think he can do this in 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, I would lean to the Falcons here. I mean, the Carolina run offense went into the tank last week without Chuba Hubbard and had a season low 39 rush yards. And if they can't run, you can't just put it all on Bryce to do it himself. He's improved as a passer, but he's not going to carry an offense at this point. And the Carolina defense remains a problem down the stretch. With Penix playing well in the first 2 games, Atlanta should get to 30 in this game. I think you could tease this with Pittsburgh if you're not as big a believer in the Steelers as I am, but teasers are dangerous in week 18 in particular because you don't know motivation factors in play. But if you want to get into the game that way, you could tease it as well. But I like Atlanta here.
I'm on the Panthers. I think the Panthers, 8.5 is just too many. I know they got blown out last week, and the run game did go in the tank, but Tampa's a really good run defense, and I just don't think Penix in this offense is going to be as explosive down the field as Baker in that Tampa passing game were. So I think Carolina has a chance to keep it close, especially if they can load up the box and sort of slow down the run. You see the Falcons have covered once in their last 7 games. That was 9.5 against the Giants. I mean, the Giants are just terrible. Panthers are not a good team with all their injuries, but they have a much better offense. I think Bryce can move the ball here and worst case scenario, come in through the back door. The NFC East, not a ton to decide here. The Commanders are jockeying for a playoff spot. If Green Bay wins and Washington loses, Green Bay's a 6 seed. If Washington wins and Green Bay wins, so Washington wins, they're the 6 seed basically. And they are a 6-point favorite in Dallas, Larry, with a total of 44. What do you like in this spot?
Yeah, well, they said they're going all in to win this game, Dan Quinn has, and because you don't want to travel to Philadelphia as the 7 seed. So I think this is a full effort from the Commanders. I'm playing the Cowboys team total under 19.5. Well, there's rumblings that we're going to see some Trey Lance. We know he's not been very good. And ever since they lost CeeDee Lamb, they've played 6 quarters without CeeDee Lamb. They've scored 13 points and 13 offensive points. They have not been able to move the ball. You have Kevontae Turpin saying all we do is check it down. We just hand the ball off and check it down. They don't even give us a chance to make plays with Cooper Rush in there. So I just think it's another bad performance from the Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I'm still leaning to the Cowboys +6, and I think we can both get there because even though Washington's not planning to rest starters, they do have several offensive linemen injured, and with Lucas and Wiley and Biotage as questionable for this game, I don't know that you want Daniels out there playing 60 minutes and risk him getting hurt either. So I think there is a potential for the Lamb injury to sink the offense for Dallas, but I think they'll be able to run the ball against a bad Washington rush defense and keep this game close. They were a complete no-show at Philly, but they had been playing well prior to that. Could have been 5 straight wins. We know that special teams play that kind of you screwed them against the Bengals. But other than that, they were playing really well. So I think they can stay close in this game. And this is just too high of a number for me. So it's even a cheap 6.5 in places. So I'm kind of waiting around, seeing if I can get a 7 for this. If I can get a 7, I definitely like the Cowboys.
Speaking of big totals in Week 18 divisional matchups, we have the Bears headed to Lambeau Field as 10-point dogs. Packers big favorites in this one, as I mentioned. If Green Bay wins and Washington loses, Green Bay is the 6th seed, but they may just be relegated to that 7 seed if Washington is able to hold off Dallas. Total here, 41. Do you think the Packers get there, RJ?
It's a big number. Green Bay's not planning to rest starters, of course, because they can get up to the 6th seed. But with several key defensive players hurt, I think Chicago could put up points in this game. They obviously want to end the season on a strong foot with Caleb Williams after that ugly game against Seattle. And I think Green Bay could take the foot off the gas in the second half and give players pseudo rest, getting ready for the wild card round if they're up big. And that allows Chicago to cover in the back door. I mean, you remember that first game, Chicago had the lead on Green Bay until a touchdown with 3 minutes left in that game. It was really close. And even though Chicago has lost 10 straight, they played a brutal schedule starting with that Week 11 game versus Green Bay, playing a lot of good teams. So I think they're probably better than their record indicates. This is just a little bit too high of a number for me. So if I'm playing this, it's going to be Bears plus 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch the full game spread here. I lean Packers -2.5 or -3 still in the first quarter. I do think we see a good effort and good effort out of the locker room from them, and then look up at the scoreboard, see where they're at in the second half, because I do think they want to remain as healthy as possible, and they're not completely healthy at this point. So for me, it would be Packers early. I don't mind the 6.5 in the first half, but do prefer the 2.5 in the opening quarter to anything else there. And then if you can't find that, Bears first half touchdowns under a half a touchdown, just the Bears to not score a touchdown in the first half, plus 105.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago starts slow. Could see them easily come through the back door here, too. If Green Bay looks up, Washington's up big, and Matt LaFleur decides to yank his starters out. The playoff race, not the only race we are watching. There are plenty of teams, plenty of very bad teams in the NFL vying for the number 1 pick. Drake May and the Patriots, he needs some help. Will they get it at the top, or will the Giants get a chance to take a quarterback? We will tell you about the bad teams, too, coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show. Week 18 action, a ton at stake. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White to break it all down. Playoffs are at stake, but the number 1 pick is also up in the air. The New England Patriots, RJ, are hosting the Buffalo Bills. We know that Pat's lost. They get number 1 pick. The Bills are going to play starters, quote, a very, very few number of snaps, according to Sean McDermott. So we'll see a little bit of Josh Allen. Hopefully he can hit his passing yards total for the season in this one. Do you think the Patriots put up any fight here, RJ?
Yeah, I have the Bills as a best bet. They're going to play Allen a very few snaps because they just want to keep him with that start streak going. They might rest some starters, but the roster is deep, and it's not like the preseason where you have 75, 90 guys on your roster and you can bench everyone. With roster limits, you can only activate 2 people off the practice squad. Buffalo's in a tough spot in that first New England game, barely won that one. Coming off that Detroit win, they started slow, but they dominated most of that game. And then you look at the quarterback on the Buffalo side that's going to play most of this game, and it's Mitchell Trubisky. In some of these cases where you're resting quarterbacks, you have guys that are questionable, but we know what Mitch Trubisky is. And if you look back at his Chicago numbers, it's actually a pretty solid quarterback. I know he got run out of town for the crime of not being Patrick Mahomes, but he actually has been a solid starter in this league before. And I think he could score some points as the Patriots defenses look cooked. 24 plus points allowed in 6 straight. And when you look at the depth that Buffalo has on the defensive side of the ball, I think they can win the battle up front against an awful New England offensive line. And the priority should be to keep May healthy. I know he's going to play in this game, but if he gets dinged up a little bit, I would take him out and not risk a long-term injury with him. So I like Buffalo to win this game. So only laying 2.5 points. I like that as a best bet.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm gonna take the under here as a lean. I don't think it would be shocking at all if the Patriots said, "Look, we want that 1 pick. We know that we can either get whether there's like a transformational defensive player up top, or more likely we can trade out and get a bunch of picks in exchange and sort of load up that roster by moving out of the 1 spot. I think they don't mind losing this at all, especially against a Bills team that isn't really trying because they have that number 2 seed locked up. I think we see plenty of Ray Davis, maybe some Ty Johnson in the backfield. Maybe they tried out some other guys, want to stay fully healthy, want to shorten this game, run the ball a ton. New England won't do a bunch on offense, and if they pull May, they really won't won't do much on offense. So I lean towards the under. Elsewhere in the AFC, the Texans and the Titans are playing in a I think completely meaningless game. The Titans are favored by 1.5 here, though. Total of 37. Game on CBS, so you should still watch it. It's weird. The Texans are locked into the 4 seed here, RJ. But D'Amico Ryan said they're not going to rest their starters at all. They're going to go in there and try and give it a go against the Titans.
Yeah, because they haven't played particularly well. I mean, you think back to that Christmas game, they were embarrassed up and down the field by the Ravens. And potentially that they're pulled early. And that's what's keeping Houston from being favored, because this game should be Houston by more than a field goal, probably like around 4.5. But because the starters are playing, I think we play Houston first half money line at plus 100. We're taking advantage of a discount line here by taking Houston in the first half, expecting they build a lead against a bad Tennessee team who's going to be evaluating players. They should be playing both quarterbacks at some point. I don't think they're really interested in going all out for the win here, but you will get a competitive Houston team in the first half that is looking to put something together going into the playoffs and show that they are a capable playoff team that can go out and beat, make possibly a run against these teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens. So I think they play their starters for a whole half, and I like taking the money line there.
I'm looking at an exacta here. I actually kind of like the Texans first half money line, Titans full game money line. Look, I would also potentially bet the Titans once the Texans score in this game. So as far as what the Texans do here, I think the starters could play a full quarter. I don't think they play the whole first half. And what I think is likely to happen here is they do want to see a successful outcome. So if they come out and score an opening drive touchdown, it wouldn't shock me if the starters are done after that point. But I do not expect them to play the starters most of this game. I expect it to be more like a preseason game. We've kind of seen this from Kansas City in similar spots to this in years past. That's what I expect. I expect the players to go through the motions, go through everything in terms of preparing for a game, go have a successful drive, then essentially get pulled. So I like the Texans early. I think the Titans ultimately win. So I would play around with some exactas here, first half full game.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Mike, too. Plus, remember, the Titans have said they're going to play both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. So you have a guy in Levis who's had some good moments this year, but hasn't been great. He was good when he got he had to sit because of injury. He came back, and he's still vying to be the starting quarterback for this team. So you could see the Titans motivated on offense, sort of throw it around, even though the game is meaningless late. The Giants at the Eagles. Eagles locked in to that 2 seed in the NFC. A 3-point favorite here on CBS with a total of 37.5. We know the Eagles are sitting almost all their starters. Saquon Barkley with a chance to break the all-time rushing record. He's not even going to play. You can argue both sides. I think it's smart by the Eagles. Get the rest. Go try to win a Super Bowl. Who cares about a yardage total now that we got 17 games? I mean, it'd be cool for history, but go get ready for the playoffs. And for that reason, I'm on the under here. I think you just don't see anything from the Giants because they're not very good, and an Eagles team motivated just to shorten the game as much as possible. Tiny total of 37.5, but I just don't think there's going to be a ton of offense. Maybe some scores by Philly, Kenny Pickett out there, and then we see them just pound the football all game. Anything for you here, Larry?
Well, I think the one thing you will see from the Giants is they're going to pepper Malik Neighbors with as many targets as possible. That's kind of the one thing they have left. And I think if the Eagles are wise, they'll be double teaming him on every single snap. I do agree with the move towards the Eagles because, like RJ said, this is not a preseason game where the rosters are 70 to 90 people. These are your main roster guys, and the Eagles roster is so much better than the Giants. Their rotational players, their backup players are in such a better system than the Giants that I could only look at Philly.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the boat with Will and looking at it under, but I like the Philly team total under 20.5. That Giants defense is terrible, but this is a lot of points for a team that will be resting players and likely starting Tanner McKee at quarterback because Kenny Pickett's banged up as well. I think Philly sticks to the run game. It's a very vanilla game plan, and the result could be like the 14-11 Saints-Giants game we saw a few weeks ago. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I like playing the Eagles under 20.5.
Jaguars at Colts. Buddy, this is a game, isn't it? Colts are -5 here after blowing their playoff chances last week, total of 44. I saw some of the Jaguars that went over the Titans. I mean, not the worst performance in the world. The defense actually showed up, RJ. You think they show up 2 weeks in a row?
I'm always looking to fade Indy as a moderate favorite, and this is what they are in this game. Their wins this year are by margins of 8 points, 6, 5, 3, 3, 1, and 1. They just do not win games by margin, even against bad teams. And they've played a decent amount of bad teams this year playing in their division. Jacksonville has lost by more than one score once since week 6. It was that ugly Detroit game where they ran up and down the field. And they've stayed pretty competitive in Mac Jones starts. And we know that, Doug Peterson doesn't care about draft position. He's not going to be the coach. He's going to go out there and try to win this game against an Indy defense that has been awful. 24 plus allowed in 7 straight, 75 points allowed to Tennessee and the Giants. I mean, even if they get up, a backdoor cover is in play with a defense that's playing like that. So Jacksonville +5 is the best bet for me.
Yeah, I'm on the Jaguars too, RJ. I think, you saw some competency from the offense. And like I said, the defense tried hard against the Titans. I know you said Doug Peterson won't be the coach. I think there's not a non-zero chance that they go win this game that he could actually end up coming back next year. They move on from Trent Baalke and they sort of redo the front office, maybe with an eye for Chapel Bill and Bill Belichick if Doug Peterson can't get it done next season. But yeah, I mean, like this game, not a lot here. I do think it's just too many points for a Jaguars team that will try hard. There are still 3 teams alive for the final AFC spot. We mentioned the Bengals already. Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos getting a great break against the Kansas City Chiefs backups. Plus, the Dolphins. Tua's questionable status. He's up in the air. It doesn't sound great for him right now. Big implications for this final AFC spot. We'll tell you all about it coming up next on The Early Edge.
Denver Broncos are world champions. They have just won Super Bowl 50.
Congratulations to the champions of the world, the Denver Broncos.
The Broncos remain without a playoff berth since they won Super Bowl 50.
Been here for 7 years and all I've done is lost.
Broncos country, let's ride.
It's the worst trade in the history of the National Football League.
With the 12th pick, the Denver Broncos select Bo Nix.
There it is.
Quarterback, Oregon.
Bo Nix, his future's bright. I'd be excited if I'm a Denver fan.
Nix to the air. Throws and caught. What a throw by Nix.
The Denver Broncos take a huge step towards clinching their first playoff berth since 2015.
The Haskins, touchdown Chargers.
End zone, caught. Higgins, touchdown, Bengals win. And the Denver Broncos will have to go back to the Mile High City and beat the Chiefs to get in.
A win and you're in. You lose, you go home.
I love the dramatics of the Denver Broncos and their attempt to get into the playoffs. They are looking, by the way, they win against the Chiefs, and they're 10.5-point favorites. This number has skyrocketed over the last week on CBS, by the way. They win, and they are in as the number 7 seed. They can still get in if they lose and Miami loses and Cincinnati loses. So they'll know for sure if they have to win. If Cincinnati loses, they'll know. If Cincinnati wins, they'll know they have to win. The Broncos would snap an 8-year playoff drought with the win. It's the longest drought ever following a Super Bowl victory, and it was the second longest coming into the season drought, active drought that is, behind only the amazing Jets. I'm going to take the under in this one at 40 now, I guess. It ticked up a half a point, 39.5 fine, but prefer 40, of course. This is just a spot where the Chiefs are going to do nothing. I mean, we were talking about it off camera, but I think the Chiefs want to lose this game, Mike, because if they win this game, it opens the door for a white-hot Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals to get in the playoffs. They're the one team that's really been able to keep up with the Chiefs, the one team to knock them out of visiting the Super Bowl is Joe Burrow, and I don't think they want him in the playoffs. I think they vastly prefer Bo Nix in the playoffs on the AFC side of things. So I think you get nothing from the Chiefs and just enough from the Broncos, who aren't going to run up the score. They're going to get a lead and then just run the ball. It's going to be the Aldrich Estime show in this one. Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams just pound the football against the Chiefs defense that won't be looking to stop them much, Mike.
Yeah, I think Kansas City really has no interest in winning this game here. You definitely want to keep Joe Burrow and the Bengals out of the playoffs. I know that Cincinnati needs a lot of help really to get in here, but when I look at this matchup for Kansas City, this is a spot where Kansas City would normally play starters 1-2 series and really keep things serious and go through the motions. I think that it's clear here. You've got to continue to remain healthy. So I'm taking the Chiefs team total here. I'm going to go under the 13.5. I just think that scoring 2 touchdowns here is a big ask for them when they're not going to be trying to score. And Denver, I think you're going to still see a relatively conservative game plan from them, knowing and understanding the situation at hand. I think the clock moves very quickly here. But for me, it's just ultimate conservative game plan from Kansas City. Any 4th and 1, we're punting the football deep. It's just one of those situations where I don't think they score 2 touchdowns in this game. So it's a number that looks like a first half number, but it's that way for a reason. I'm going to go under on the Chiefs team total.
Well, I'm living in the reality where the Steelers win that game and the Bengals are eliminated at this point anyway. And you know who does want to have a good game for the Chiefs is Carson Wentz. He wants to be the next Sam Darnold. Go out, get a starting job this offseason. And I think he is a quality backup. We've seen his history. He's played like an MVP level before his injury with Eagles that one year. I think he can surprise the Denver defense that has allowed 30 points in 3 of their last 4 games, including one of them against the Browns, who can't do anything at this point of the season. Kansas City's defense has allowed 14 points per game in the last 5. You know, like we said, can't rest everyone all game. Key players could see some time early. So I like them first half plus 6.5 as a lean for the Chiefs. I think when Wentz is in the game, they'll be fine. And then maybe look to live bet Denver once they go to Oladoku, the third quarterback.
The Dolphins at the Jets. What could be like this is it's kind of by the way, this game to me feels like the Week 18 game where one team has nothing to play for, one team is supremely motivated to try to make the playoffs, and like the team that has nothing to play for just comes out and looks a little bit better. Just my gut feeling there. If the Dolphins are in with a win and a Denver loss, that's how they get in the playoffs. They would be the 4th team in NFL history to make the playoffs after a 2-6 start. And Mike McDaniel would match Don Shula as the only Dolphins coaches to start their career with 3 straight playoff trips. Of note, Larry, Tua Tagovailoa not likely to play in this game. It's going to be the Snoop Huntley show. Does that scare you off the Dolphins at all?
Not really. The cold weather is going to be a factor, but I think it's a factor for Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old. And, he played well in Jacksonville, played well in Miami. Then he comes back to New York, is terrible against the Rams, and doesn't show up in Buffalo, was horrible in that game. He's just trying to get that 500th touchdown. I mean, this team is completely checked out. Quinnen Williams not practicing, Sauce Gardner not practicing. Everyone is commenting that they won out. And Snoop Huntley led the NFL last week in completion percentage above expectation. He also ran for 52 yards and a score. I think the Dolphins get it done. They've dominated the series. 4 straight wins, 12 out of 14 over the miserable New York Jets. I'll take the Dolphins to win on the road.
It's my lean is going to be Pro Bowl quarterback Snoop Huntley. Sorry.
My lean is going to be under 39 points. If Huntley's at quarterback, I think it's hard to see either team getting to 20 points. Jets are going to try to knock the Dolphins out of the playoffs here potentially, not knowing what's going to happen in that Denver game. And Huntley, as good as he was last week, they scored 20 points against a defeated Browns team. And so I just don't think there's a lot of offensive upside there for Miami. I don't think there's a lot of offensive upside for the Jets at this point with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So lean there is going to be under on this game.
Yeah, former Pro Bowl quarterback, Snoop Huntley. The most ridiculous Pro Bowl nod of all time. I apologize for that, RJ. Chargers at the Raiders. Chargers are minus 4.5 in Las Vegas with a total of 41.5. The game on CBS. The Chargers can get as high as the 5 seed with a win and a Pittsburgh loss. So they'll know if the Bengals win on Saturday, they'll know that they can go get that 5 seed. And they are the 6th seed with a loss or a Pittsburgh win. Larry, do you think that Saturday game, does that impact your pick here in terms of motivation, or you just like the Raiders in this spot?
Well, I think it's a free roll on the Raiders because if the Steelers win, and I think they have a great shot, Jim Harbaugh has pretty much made it clear that he's going to rest guys. And then the Raiders, Antonio Pierce should be coach of the year if we had that award just for the final quarter of the season. He is an expert at getting his teams to play when it doesn't matter anymore. The way they finished last year, 3-1, they're going for their 3rd straight win this year with Aiden O'Connell playing well, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. They have enough weapons. So I think it's a free roll payroll on the Raiders, and their defense has played pretty well, under 5 yards per play allowed in the last 3 games. I know they haven't faced great quarterbacks like Justin Herbert, but I do like Pittsburgh in that game Saturday, and I also like the Raiders.
Yeah, we know the Raiders are giving max effort down the stretch at this point based on the winning their way out of the number 1 seed the last few weeks. No doubt they show up here. And I have this line at -5 if the Chargers are giving full effort. So I was able to lock in the Raiders at +6, as I just think that's a good number anyway. And then Larry's right. If Pittsburgh does win, this is going to flip considerably because the Chargers aren't going to have to go all out in that game when not being able to improve their seed. So correlated parlay of the season is getting Steelers and Raiders into a money line parlay together. You can get it around +475. I got it early in the week when that Steelers number was +3 at +525. So if you're looking around +500 on that, you know that you're going to get a much different game in this one if the Steelers win, and they're pretty good odds to win that game at around +120 or so. So I think that's definitely something you want to get at least a sprinkle on.
Yeah, it's a great call. That is a fantastic correlation. Pittsburgh pulls off the upset. Harbaugh is going to yank everybody and rest them for the playoffs. Speaking of resting for the playoffs, you better believe Sean McVay is resting everybody. Nobody rests players more than Sean McVay, and that's why the Seahawks, who were a 2.5-point favorite briefly until it was announced that Jimmy Garoppolo would start for Matthew Stafford, are now favored by 6.5 at the Los Angeles Rams with a total of 39. So if the Rams win, they are the 3 seed. And if the Rams lose and Tampa Bay wins, the Rams fall to the 4 seed. Now, you could argue you don't want to be the 4 seed because you're going to play a 14-win wildcard team in terms of the loser of Detroit, Minnesota, but you don't know how Washington and Green Bay, their seeding stuff is going to shake out. And so, I don't know, man. The Rams have beaten the Vikings, right? Maybe you'd rather get the Vikings than get the Packers and a white-hot Jordan Love in the playoffs. So I think you could argue either way with McVay's decision here. But more importantly, you're getting the guys rest, Larry, and I think he is going to rest everyone.
Yeah, and he's made it clear that he thinks the rest for Matthew Stafford and other guys is more important than who he plays, and that is leading me to the Seahawks team total over 22.5. Cleve TA, the analytics guru, had a great stat about Geno Smith. He's played 14 games indoors, and his teams have averaged 31 points and gone over their team total 12 times. And we know he has $6 million at stake in this game if he hits some very reachable milestones. You also have DK Metcalf going for some big numbers, and Mike McDonald said it publicly. We want that 10th win. We're trying to set a foundation here for years to come, even though they're out of the playoffs. So I think it's a big offensive day for the Seahawks because this Rams defense is not very good anyway, 25th in yards per play. And if they're resting guys, that makes it all the easier for Seattle.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would sort of lean towards the Seahawks here. It's a bigger number, but I don't think you're going to see anything out of the Rams in this spot. I don't think they care at all about the seeding situation. You let the cards fall that way and just make sure you're healthy when you get to the playoffs. 2 teams that won't be in the playoffs from the NFC West, the 49ers and Cardinals, RJ. The Cardinals -4 in this spot. Of course, we're not going to see Brock Purdy, that injury on Monday night in the last hurrah there for them just to try and look good against the Lions. Total here of 42.5.
Yeah, I was hoping to play the 49ers at a larger number once Purdy got announced that he was going to be out and Josh Dobbs is starting. But the line has not inflated, and San Francisco is just too injured to back at this point. Had 10 DNPs in practice on Thursday. So with James Conner out, I'm not expecting much from the Arizona run game, which is the key to their offense. So I like the under 42.5 as a lean.
I'm leaning to the 49ers side here still. You mentioned Connor being out. I was expecting this line to sit at 6.5. I like Josh Dobbs. I think he's talked publicly already this week about this really being an opportunity for him and an audition for, again, essentially future work. I like his ability in the run game. I think he's got enough rushing upside to keep a drive alive. So I like San Francisco here still at 4. Again, I thought it would be 6.5. Still will play it at 4, though.
All right, Sunday Night Football, as it is every year. the only game, or not the only game that matters, but the only game that matters inside its own little realm, and it features for the first time ever 14-win teams. One of them is going to be a wild card. Sam Darnold leading the odds for comeback player of the year, and Jared Goff playing just outstanding football with the Lions offense carrying this team as the defensive injuries pile up. This is for all the marbles, the number one seed, the NFC North title, and it is a big one. We will tell you our best bets for that game coming up next on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show for Week 18. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White. We got one game left to talk about, and it is a doozy. Sunday Night Football, Vikings at the Lions. Lions -3, a total here of 56. The first regular season game between two teams with 13-plus wins in NFL history, and the first final week matchup to determine the number one seed since the Cowboys-Giants in 1993. Of course, the loser of this game will be the 5 seed and the first ever 14-win wild card team. Thank goodness we don't have a sub-500 division winner. The people would be out rioting in one of these cities. The winner, number one seed in the NFC, and of course the NFC North champion. Larry, do you like a side or total in this one?
Well, Will, the two most startling things I heard on this show today are that Will Levis is vying to be a starting quarterback next year, and that Carson Wentz envisions himself as the next Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has thrown 18 touchdowns against 2 picks in the last 6 games, and they're playing a Lions team that I love so much, but they've given up 8 yards of play to the 49ers last week. Alex Anzalone, the key linebacker, it's not clear if he will be back for this game to give them some defensive relief. I just think this is going to be a classic shootout. I don't think either team can stop the other. If you're giving me a full field goal, I'll take it with Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm going to lean to the Lions, but I want to be laying 2.5, and there's plenty of 2.5s in the market, so I like Detroit at -2.5. Then the offense continues to make up for the defensive issues, as we've seen them do week in and week out. Remember, Detroit did not have Aiden Hutchinson in the first meeting in Minnesota, and they still got 4 sacks in that game. Score was kept a little bit artificially close due to a Minnesota fumble return touchdown late, but Detroit kind of handled them. So I believe Detroit is the better team here, and being at home, and if being able to lay less than a field goal, I like taking Detroit -2.5.
I'm going to play a little more exotic play here. I'm going to bet both teams to score in the first quarter. This is a line that doesn't really get attacked much in the NFL, but this game plays a lot closer to a college football game. It's -110 for both teams to score in the first quarter over at BetMGM. I like that quite a bit here. I don't think the Lions are going to be able to stop Minnesota, and I don't think Minnesota is going to end up stopping the Lions. The Lions are just a juggernaut offensively. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of deep shot early in this game from the Lions side, maybe a trick play. The stakes are obviously extremely high here, but I don't think the Lions defense can stop Minnesota. You're playing in a dome in perfect conditions while kicking can be shaky at times. It's as good as it gets in terms of looking for a field goal on both sides. So give me both teams to score in the first quarter, -110.
Yeah, that's a great look. I mean, this is a Minnesota team that is, when they play, on that the scripts from Kevin O'Connell early, is really explosive and really sharp early on. And I agree with you, Mike. They should be able to move the ball against Detroit's defense. I think the Detroit offensive line can hold up against that blitzing. And Jared Goff, again, playing great football, tons of weapons at his disposal. I think 56 is such a big number. I just don't think you can look at the under. I mean, I think I would lean a little bit towards the over. There's some spidey sense in my head has me thinking Vikings. Sam Darnold's been so good. It's hard to really fade him in. By the way, it'll be interesting to see, as RJ said off camera, nobody puts Pete Prisco in a corner. Will the AP voters, will they be allowed to vote for Sam Darnold? He's now the favorite to win the Comeback Player of the Year award, even though he's basically coming back from, being drafted by the Jets. It's kind of a crazy situation. So certainly something to monitor. With Burrow, being in the MVP race, maybe that impacts it a little bit. But Darnold, now the favorite to win Comeback Player of the Year. All right. That will do it for us. Great stuff, fellas. As always, excited for the playoff version of this show. Of course, we'll be here on the Early Edge. And if you want more of the Early Edge, you can go to sportsline.com/join. Use promo code WINNERS, WINNERS, at sportsline.com/join to get 60% off an annual plan. And while you're subscribing to yourself, make sure and check out the Early Edge podcast, a daily SportsLine betting podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Use the QR code on your screen to subscribe. That'll do it for us. For RJ, for Larry, for Mike, I'm Will. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys soon.